Hey there, welcome to the channel. So you guys probably all know Martha Stewart because, she has recipes and home goods and all this other stuff. Been around forever. In any case, she also has some gluten-free recipes on her website. And I came across one that I think we're going to try. She claims, or the website claims, that this is their best gluten-free pie crust recipe. But is it? I'm Jamie with SavorySaver. I share gluten-free recipes, tips, tricks, and resources to make your gluten-free lifestyle easier. So please consider hitting subscribe, and let's see if this is really a good pie crust recipe. So before I even make the recipe, I've printed out the recipe. Let's go over some good and bad about the recipe itself, because if you're like me, the first thing you do is read through the recipe. So I've got it printed out here, and let's go over some good things about it. For one, it was developed by Martha Stewart's test kitchen. They go through the recipe multiple times, multiple people doing it before they even use it on their website. So that's a good thing. The recipe says you can use any gluten-free flour blend that already has everything in it. So if you're like me, you have multiples or you have a favorite that you use on a regular basis. So there's no putting separate gluten-free flours and xanthan gum together to get a good consistency. It also recommends using either Bob's Red Mill or cup for cup. So the good thing with that is those are two flours that you have the option of using, and both of those are easy to find in store and online. Today for the recipe, I will be using the Bob's Red Mill because cup for cup, I have an idea on a video I want to do with this later. So I want to keep this if I can. Another thing with this recipe is there's a frequently asked question about your gluten-free pie crust being hard. And it says if that's the case, you've used too much water and to use the smallest amount of water needed to get the dough to come together. Now, let's talk about what I don't like about the recipe. Number one, the instructions. This just tells me how to make the pie crust. And it's only putting the pie crust together. It doesn't tell me it's going to roll out easily. It doesn't tell me how to bake the pie crust, if I need to bake it ahead of time, or if I just need it for the pie I'm filling. I'm actually going to blind bake the pie crust, and it doesn't tell me what temperature I should use and how I should do that. That would be appreciated in the recipe for me, because now I have to go and hunt down blind baking a pie crust. The other thing that makes me a little unsure about this recipe, there were like 657 or 675 people that had rated the recipe, and it only gets a 3 out of 5 stars. So let's see how it comes out. I did read some of the comments. There are a couple things I think I'm going to do after reading the comments. That's always good to read those. So I've yapped enough about the recipe. Let's jump into it and see if it's good and if it should be considered their best. So this recipe does use the food processor, which I think makes it easier. It just gives us an extra dish to wash. But if we're washing a bowl anyway, take out the food processor, make it a little easy for yourself, and go from there. So the ingredients, we're going to add 1 cup of gluten-free flour. Again, this is Bob's Red Mill. You could also use cup for cup. I will link below if you have trouble finding those brands near you. We're also going to add half a teaspoon of coarse salt. So I'm just using kosher salt. Let's give this a quick pulse just a few times to mix the flour and the salt. Next, I'm going to add 1 stick of cold unsalted butter that's been cut into pieces. So it says small pieces, so I cut them in about a tablespoon cut and then just quartered those. I think that's probably small enough. I don't think we need it super small because we're going to pulse it. Make sure your butter is cold. And remember, the food processor can warm up, especially the blades. So make sure your butter is nice and cold. Now we want to pulse the butter and the flour together until it looks like a fine meal and there aren't any large pieces of butter. So let's do that. All right, let's tilt you guys down and see if I can show you what it looks like. So it almost has the consistency of canned Parmesan cheese, if that gives you anything to work on. So It's a little bigger than cornmeal, but I would say it's more the consistency of canned Parmesan cheese. So I've got that done. Let's add the liquid. So for the liquid, we're gonna add 1 egg, and of course, that is gonna help everything bind since we don't have gluten in the recipe. Also got some ice water. I'm gonna start with 2 tablespoons of ice water. There's 1. There's 2. It says we can add up to 2 more tablespoons, adding it 1 at a time, but we want the dough to hold together when squeezed. So we're gonna try 2 first and we'll add more only if we need to. So again, you wanna pulse it until it holds together. All right guys, as you can see, it is stuck to the side. So I would say it's good. Let's take this off. All right, so there's our dough, and let's talk about the next thing I don't like. It doesn't tell me anything about rolling it out or if I'm pressing this into place. I did read the comments. Someone said that they actually chilled it because it rolled out better. So I think I am gonna do that little tip. So I'm gonna let this chill for, let's say 15, 20 minutes. Let's do that. And then I'll get my board out while it's chilling. So I'm gonna put this just in a bowl. I'm gonna cover it, throw it in the fridge, 15, 20 minutes, get myself set up to roll it out, and we'll keep moving forward. So I've chilled the dough for 15 minutes, and it actually feels really good now. It was a little sticky when I first made it into a ball, but now it feels really good. So I'm hoping that it's gonna roll easily for me. I do think, to be on the safe side, I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of, well, I guess I'm gonna sprinkle a lot of starch across my board. This is tapioca starch. I'm just gonna do a little of that just for some insurance. All right, so my next problem with this gluten-free pie crust is I have no idea how much it makes. Does it make a 9-inch, 10-inch, deep dish? Who knows? I'm hoping it makes a deep dish because the pie I'm gonna be making, I think, is a deep dish, so I actually need it to be a little bigger. So let's do a little bit of tapioca starch across the top as well. Here's the pie plate I'm using. Let's see how it rolls. So far, so good. Minimal cracking, I like that. Cracking around the edge, which is no different than any other pie crust. Seems pretty pliable. I'm really liking that. As usual, my rolling skills are lacking because I'd like it to be round and it's not. All right, let's see where I'm at. I'm actually not doing too bad. And it looks like I may get enough to make it into a deep dish. All right, it is getting a little thin now, and it's also starting to tear just a little bit. So I'm gonna work a little more tapioca starch just into those areas. Okay. So I think I'm gonna call that good. Now, my next challenge is gonna be getting it from here to there. So let's see how that works. Let's see if I can roll it around the pin like a regular pie crust. These mats, really helpful. That was not helpful. So let's take this over here. Now it's just tearing on me. So let's try something else. Let's try this. And let's flip the entire thing over. After I take off these pieces, because I don't want them on the floor. Can you guys tell I don't make pie crust very often, nor do I really like it? But we gotta do what we need to do when we're gluten-free, don't we? Because it's a whole lot more cost-effective to make one than to go buy one that's frozen that probably costs $8 or $9. All right, let's see if I can do this. Okay, so not horrible. I've got some work to do, but it's pretty much in the pan. Thanks to the silicone mat. So let's just shape it. And then since I don't have to worry about any gluten, I can just piece it together because it shouldn't make the crust any tougher. So let's piece it in. All right, I think this part I'm gonna cut just with a knife and figure out where it goes best. The dough is actually really pliable and it doesn't really crack. So, you know, it may look sloppy, but as far as workability, that egg is really helping with that. So I do really like that about this recipe. All right, so it's not very pretty. I do have some extra dough. So I'm gonna go around, I'm not gonna show it on video, I don't think. I'm gonna go around though. I've got a couple cracks down here at the bottom. I'm gonna put a little bit of extra dough on there. I want it as even as I can just because I wanna make sure it bakes right. And I might add some extra dough around here. So I'm gonna edit all that out, but I'm definitely gonna show you what it looks like because the next part is that I gotta bake this. So let me get this cleaned up just a little bit and then we'll take a look at getting it in the oven. So guys, I wasn't gonna film this part, but I think you guys need to see this. This was me re-rolling out the pie crust and it's still just as pliable and still not cracking. So that's really good as far as handling it because it's gonna be easier for you to handle. So I've got a paring knife and I'm just cutting strips, just gently so I don't cut through my mat. But look, everything's together, no cracking, easy to mold. So let me just show you what I'm doing. We're not gonna have any pretty fluting on here, so if you wanna see that, you're probably gonna pick another channel because I don't know if you'll see that on this channel ever. So I'm just trying to bring it up here because this actually has some fluting on it. So I'm trying to bring it to the edge to, one, hopefully help keep it from shrinking as it bakes. But with the tapioca starch, it's not wanting to stick. So I just put my finger in a little bit of water and just run it just along the edge of the crust. And then take your other piece of crust and it just sticks right to it. And then all you have to do is try to make sure you're getting it relatively even thickness wise. But it actually stuck really well. So I am gonna finish this a little bit. Guys, it's not gonna be the prettiest, but I'm gonna fill it, so who cares? So now let me finish this up and we'll bake. Okay, so not too shabby, fits in a deep dish. Still have a little bit of extra left, not much. A couple tablespoons worth. So I've got my oven preheating to 375 because the recipe didn't tell me how to blind bake it. So I Googled, found King Arthur's method for blind baking. I don't have beans I want to use and I don't have pie weights. I may try popping this dish into here because it fits and that should weigh the bottom down. But one other thing I'm going to do to hopefully prevent shrinking is I'm going to chill the pie crust while the oven preheats. So that'll firm up some of that butter. It's been out long enough now, of course, it's softening. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge. My oven is preheating and that'll take 10 to 15 minutes. So while it preheats, this will chill down. Then I'm gonna pop this in the oven. I'm gonna bake it for probably 20 minutes or so, look at it, and then another 20 to 30 taking this out. I will give you better directions on that at the end of the video, and we'll see what this looks like. Our Martha Stewart gluten-free pie crust that the website thinks is their best is done. And it's actually cool because I'm gonna have to make a pie for this, but that's going to be in another video. So I know some of you guys like to see all of it at once, but pie crust, some pie crusts are better for certain pies than others. And I like to keep it separate because if you're just looking for a pie crust recipe, then obviously you don't want to sit through the pie portion. So definitely watch for the pie that I'm putting in this. I'm going to do an eggnog pie since I'm making this around Christmas. So let's talk about the recipe. So if you look closely, you can see this indentation around the top. That is because I blind baked it and I didn't want to use pie. I don't have pie weights. I didn't want to use beans. So I actually took another pie dish and put it over it. Baked it at 375 for 20 minutes, then took the pie dish off, put it back in the oven. I did dock the bottom of the fork the second half of the bake time and baked it for about 15 or 16 more minutes until it was done. That was a great method for the pie crust. It did puff up in the middle after the first 20, but I docked it and it went in by itself and it cooked itself back down. So that's a good little method to do. It's nice and golden. It pretty much looks like a regular pie crust. You can see the patchwork stuff I did on it, but it all baked together. And once I put a filling in here, you're not gonna know. A couple little holes in there, but overall the shrinking didn't happen because of that being blind baked with that pie crust and it holding down the crust at the top. So I like that about the recipe. It looks normal. Taste-wise, I can't speak for it yet, but definitely check out the pie video because I will be tasting that and I'll test the crust at the same time. I don't know if this is the best gluten-free pie crust out there, but Martha Stewart's is definitely one to try in regards to making it. I had no issues making it. The instructions aren't great on the recipe, but a few things that I did differently. I chilled the dough, as one of the comments in the recipe said, 15 minutes or so, just to start firming up that butter. Before I baked off the crust, I did chill it for 15 minutes while my oven was preheating, again, to chill down that crust. You want that butter colder when it goes in so it doesn't melt all over the place. In regards to rolling it, I don't like rolling stuff. You guys have watched videos on here where I gripe and complain the entire time I have to roll something, especially if it's a sticky gluten-free dough. This one was wonderful. It rolled out easy. It went back together easy. It didn't crack all over the place. Definitely a good recipe in regards to that. Easy to find gluten-free flours. Bob's Red Mill and Cup for Cup both work in this recipe according to the website. And of course, I can only speak for the Bob's Red Mill because that's what I used. But if you're looking for a pie crust that's easy, single crust, easy ingredients, Martha Stewart's gluten-free one is one to try. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please leave all your comments below. Do you have a favorite pie crust? Leave that in the comments below if you want, if it's something I should try. I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.